Please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's so great to see this large crowd here tonight. I'm always happy when we have a big turnout of our residents at the City Council meeting, so it's great to see you all tonight. A couple of things I wanted to start off with the Mayor's Minute and Council comments. If you haven't heard yet, we were really pleased to hear the announcement that Governor Youngkin had signed the state budget, which included a major allocation for the city of Bristol, Virginia, the $26.5 million for the Bristol landfill remediation, and we are so thrilled that this money has come through. We've worked really hard on this to get this funding for the landfill, and I'd like to extend a special thank you to Senator Todd Pillion for his tireless advocacy on behalf of the city of Bristol. He worked really hard for us in trying to get this money and successfully did so. And then also Delegate Israel O'Quinn and his dedicated efforts to securing this funding for the landfill. And I'll have to also throw in that I think actually the entire Southwest delegation too. I know they work hard together as a team, so I was really thrilled when it came through in that budget. And then also to the General Assembly members who supported this allocation, because it means so much to us here in Bristol. As you all know, the city of Bristol, Virginia has been facing significant financial challenges. And so with a lot of our funding coming in, going straight to the landfill and to work on to fix those efforts out there. So I just wanted again to say thank you publicly, because it means so much to our residents and to this council who has worked really hard, as well as the city staff who have spent time in Richmond multiple occasions, Ms. Spradlin and Mr. Eads also in working hard for this. So I'll pass it along now and see if there are any other council comments.
Well, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to say congratulations to the Bristol Rhythm, which is Bristol's new semi-professional soccer team. Their first game was this past Saturday, so congrats to them on getting their season up and running. They played over at Gene Malcolm Stadium. They weren't really sure exactly how big the turnout would be for the very first game, and they announced the attendance, and it was over 1,000 people were out there. And there were food and drinks, and there were bounce houses for kids. It was really a great time, and the weather was sort of cold and rainy too. So their next game is this upcoming Saturday, the 18th. So hopefully there's also a big crowd out there to support those young guys that are playing soccer out there representing Bristol.
Well, first I'll join with Councilman Farnham and say good job to the Rhythm. It was a hard-fought game, and it's a lot of people to show up for the first game of a semi-professional sports team. A lot more than some baseball games pull. The other thing that I'll mention, obviously June 1st is the In the Pines concert, which will be happening in downtown Bristol. We're very excited for that. I know that the last day to buy tickets early and I think get a little bit of a discount is rapidly approaching. So if you are interested in getting tickets for In the Pines, get with BCM and get your tickets. We're looking forward to seeing Dwight Yoakam and everybody else.
I'd like to jump in and just kind of reiterate what the mayor said about the General Assembly and the work they did on the funding for the city. Senator Pillion and Delegate O'Quinn did such a phenomenal job advocating for us, but also would like to toss in the mayor herself. She was in Richmond quite a bit, as was Ms. Spradlin. They were the dream team. They were meeting with legislators. They were answering phone calls. They were working early mornings, late nights, trying to advocate for us, trying to advocate for the citizens. The $26.5 million that the state is giving us graciously will go such a long ways in helping. It doesn't get us out of the hole literally or figuratively, but it goes a long way. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot of progress to be made, but that is a great first step. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, General Assembly members. We appreciate it. And then I've got a couple of announcements myself. So last week was Teacher Appreciation Week. Just want to thank our teachers in our school system for doing such a phenomenal job. They go above and beyond. Our school system would not be the same without them, so thank them for that. And then also on the 21st, the athletic department is having, at 7 p.m. at Virginia High, they're doing their athletic awards. So I hope folks will go out and support. Our teams have worked so hard this season. They've done such a great job throughout the year. So let's go cheer them on one last time. And then also, we have graduation on the 24th, so I hope everyone can show up, wear some bright orange, Bearcat orange, support our kids as they graduate and walk across that stage. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And also thank you to you, Vice Mayor Holmes. I know you also did a lot of advocating for that funding as well, and thank you for that. Okay, city manager's comments.
Yes, Council, I just have a few comments. Like Council, I want to thank Senator Pillion and Delegate Quinn for their assistance in helping the city obtain $26.5 million for landfill and remediation. Senator Pillion and Delegate O'Quinn have been instrumental over the past several years in helping Bristol in our financial situation, both directly and indirectly. Directly with this funding that we need for the landfill, and then indirectly in leading the charge several years ago to have casino gaming here in Bristol. So without those two shepherding those two pieces of legislation through, the city of Bristol, and I say this with all sincerity, would have very little chance of survival. It has been a pleasure to work with them, and I think they have the best interest of the city at heart, and they've done everything they can to help us and put us in a position for success in the future. As everybody knows, we will have in this upcoming school year 3 school buildings that will no longer be in use. The city does have out requests for information to reuse those school buildings, and those are due back on June 28th of 2024. So if you know of any developers, or even if yourself would be interested in one of the school buildings, please take a look at our RFIs that are posted online under the Economic Development page and reply by June 28th. It's National Police Week this week from May 12th through May 18th, so I want to thank our police department and all the officers for everything they do in our community. They keep us safe every single day and every single night. So thanks to the officers for everything that they do. The Bristol Rhythm season, once again, opened on May the 11th at Gene Malcolm Stadium. I believe I did see a post somewhere that there were over 1,200 people at that game. A significant turnout for the first game of the season. Hopefully that turnout will continue to grow. The city has an opening on the Planning Commissions. Applications are due to the city clerk by May the 15th of 2024, so that is tomorrow. So if you know anybody that would be interested in joining the Planning Commission, please have those applications in by tomorrow. Last but not least, I want to say congratulations to Neil Montgomery. She graduated from Lead Bristol today, so a huge accomplishment, and I appreciate everything that she does for the city and taking Lead Bristol on, and I'm sure she did fabulous for them.
All right, yes. Congratulations to Neil. That's wonderful. Well, I'll give you a round of a hand. Yep. All right, we're looking for an adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor, and to the rest of the council, just a question about the adoption of the agenda. I know we have a closed session, and we have a good amount of people here who have signed up to speak over a variety of topics, so just wanted to get everyone's opinion about making a motion to adopt the agenda, but moving our closed session actually later, just towards the end of the agenda, even after the matters to be presented for non-agenda items, after item G, if that's agreeable to everyone.
Okay.
If that is.
I think that we need it prior to some items on the agenda, so I believe that Neil has a fuller thing because he's got some other changes as well, but we're talking about moving it to a new item E7, pushing the current item E7 down to E8.
So let me go ahead and make that motion. So I move that we adopt the agenda with the following changes, that the closed session for personnel and closed session for legal matter landfill be moved to immediately following item E6 on the agenda, and that we add.
Were you getting that?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
All right, sorry.
And that we add another reason for closed session under legal matters for the abortion resolution. So that is my motion.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Osborne to move the closed session to after item E6 and add also in their abortion resolution. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Pollard. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. All right. So that moves us to our first item on the agenda, and that is a proclamation recognizing May as Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month. Staff report, Randy.
Council, I'm going to let Jake maybe or Councilman Holmes give a little bit more of an introduction to this syndrome and how it impacts people. I think he would probably be best served to speak on that, and better so than I can. So I'll turn it over to him if that's okay with him.
Yes, I think that would be great, and also if you would like to read the proclamation after you do that.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you both. I appreciate this opportunity. I've learned a lot over the last couple of months about Ehlers-Danlos. My wife was recently diagnosed with it. I know there are several in the audience here that have it as well that are here to support this resolution. The Ehlers-Danlos syndromes are a group of 13 heritable connective tissue disorders. The conditions are caused by genetic changes that affect connective tissue. Each type of EDS has its own set of features with distinct diagnostic criteria. Some features are seen across all types of EDS, including joint hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, long word, and tissue fragility. It's a progressive disease of some sort. There's no known cure for it. It's just treating the disease itself, the symptoms. It can be painful. It can be life-altering as you progress through it even more. So I appreciate the opportunity for the council to recognize May as the Awareness Month, and I will read the resolution. All right. A proclamation of Ehlers-Danlos Syndromes and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month. Whereas Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, EDS, are a group of 13 heritable connective tissue disorders that together affect 1 in 5,000 people. Each type of EDS has its own set of symptoms, but some features are seen across all types of EDS, including joint hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility. Whereas hypermobility spectrum disorders, HSD, are connective tissue disorders that cause joint hypermobility, instability, injury, and pain. Other symptoms such as fatigue, headaches, GI problems, and autonomic dysfunction are also often seen as part of HSD. Whereas there is no cure for any type of EDS or HSD, the conditions are managed by addressing a person's symptoms. EDS and HSD can cause a variety of symptoms in many different areas of the body, so people with these conditions often require multiple providers in different specialities to manage their care. Whereas access to professionals who are knowledgeable about EDS and HSD is limited in Bristol, Virginia. Lack of awareness about EDS and HSD in Bristol, Virginia, and across the world stands in the way of the diagnosis, management, and research of these conditions. Whereas awareness about EDS and HSD by both medical professionals and the general public can help improve the lives of people living with EDS and HSD in Bristol, Virginia. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Bristol, Virginia hereby declares May 2024 as Ehlers-Danlos Syndromes and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month, adopted this 14th of May, 2024.
All right, thank you for that. And we also have 2 people signed up for public comment for this. So I would like to ask Carrie Edwards to come up and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. You'll have a green light and then a yellow light that gives you a warning, and then a red light that your time is up.
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Carrie Edwards. I currently live at 370 Patterson Hill Road. That's in Blountville. But at the time of my diagnosis, I was a resident of Bristol, Virginia. Thank you for allowing me a moment to speak about the proclamation recognizing May as Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month. I am a member of the East Tennessee Ehlers-Danlos and HDS support group, but we serve the entire Tri-Cities. As I said, I was a resident of Bristol, Virginia when I received my diagnosis, but that was 10 years ago. as did my son Orion, received at the same time. My diagnosis took 4 years to receive, but the average is 10 years for someone with this disorder to receive a diagnosis. It's an estimated, the newest numbers are 650,000 Americans are affected by these disorders, and they are all facing those same numbers. It's through acts of awareness such as this that we make the necessary changes that lower the time spent reaching a diagnosis and facilitating the necessary medical treatment and care that raises the quality of life for people in our community affected by EDS and HDS. So from myself and from the rest of our community of medical zebras, we sincerely thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Becky Evendine. Hello.
Becky Evenden, 210 Race Day Center Drive, Bristol, Tennessee. And as an aside, congratulations on the landfill funding. And also congratulations to Jake for reading that whole litany of medical conditions. You did great. Good evening, City Council. I'm here tonight to speak in support of your resolution declaring May as Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and Hypermobility Spectrum Disorders Awareness Month. I understand that Hannah Holmes has taken the initiative on this proclamation, and I want to applaud her efforts on this proclamation. To my knowledge, Bristol, Virginia is the first locality in Southwest Virginia and Northeast Tennessee to make such an acknowledgement. For this reason, although I am a Tennessee resident, I'm here tonight to applaud this step forward for awareness for these connective tissue disorders. Receiving a diagnosis of EDS or HSD can be the difference between barely surviving and thriving. Unfortunately, low awareness in the medical community and general population continues to be a barrier to both diagnosis and appropriate plan of care. For me personally, diagnosis and genetic testing led to a gradual improvement in my plan of care such that I was able to regain health and live a very full life. However, diagnosis and testing was a very long road. 7 years ago, as a resident of Bristol, Virginia, I could not get the help that I needed in Virginia. I was very blessed to be referred to a specialist at Vanderbilt, who then referred me to genetics. Many in our area have not had this advantage. Also, I've been blessed to connect with a local group of patients that Carrie mentioned called the East Tennessee Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome Group. And as of right now, you can find us on Facebook. My hope is that this proclamation will help others to receive the diagnosis, the help, and the support that they need to live a fuller life with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome and hypermobility spectrum disorders. So thank you again for doing this.
Right. Thank you. All right, we're looking for a council motion and second.
I move the proclamation.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Holmes and a second by Councilman Pollard. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. All right. Do you want to say anything about the governor's meeting?
Yeah. And-
Before we get a picture? Okay.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add a few more comments to this. I do want to mention my wife again as the one that initiated this. She asked me to do this, so I could not say no. So I appreciate her taking the lead on this. As she got her diagnosis back in January, and her journey to get that diagnosis was 3 years, so that's still significantly better than the average person of 10 to 12. So I know the struggle that you all have been through from what she's been through, and it's not an easy thing. And something that I think, Carrie, you mentioned this, the zebra comment. The mascot for Ehlers-Danlos is the zebra because for so long doctors were taught if it sounds like a horse, if it smells like a horse, if it looks like a horse, it's a horse. If these symptoms line up to this, it lines up to that, it's probably this or nothing at all. But with connective tissue disorders, there's so many things that they're connected to that all these little things look like just little things that aren't connected, but they're actually the same thing. So when you hear that horse, when you see that horse, when you smell that horse, it might actually be a zebra. So that's where that comes from. So the awareness is good for the public. It's good for these meetings so the public can see this, but it's also more important that we get doctors and we get medical professionals seeing this as well, so they know those connections. They know that path that can be followed. Something I've been saying is doctors are experts in the medical field, but you're an expert in your own self, your own body. if you see something that's not normal, if you feel something that's not normal, advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions and push back a little bit because you know yourself. So with that, I could ramble all night, but I did also want to acknowledge that the governor's office also designated May as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and hypermobility spectrum disorders awareness month. This came in the mail a couple days ago. The governor signed it, Secretary of the Commonwealth Kelly G. She also signed it. She's a friend of mine from a previous job, so I thanked her profusely for doing it. And she stressed to me the importance of proclamations like this is bringing that public awareness, bringing that visibility to this. So I just want to add that out there, or toss that out there as well. If you're having some of those symptoms or you don't know what they are, look it up and try to connect the dots. And I know my wife did a lot of research for herself, and she connected a lot of those dots for herself and took it to her doctor first. So don't be afraid to advocate.
All right, thank you. So if you all would like to join us out front here, we'll present you with the proclamations.
Okay.
All right, the next one on the agenda is a proclamation for National Travel and Tourism Week. Staff report, Randy.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is National Travel and Tourism Week. National Travel and Tourism Week celebrates the vibrant tapestry of experiences and destinations that make up our global travel landscape. It's a time to acknowledge the profound impact of travel and tourism on our economies, cultures, and personal lives. From exploring natural wonders to immersing in diverse cultures, travel opens our minds and hearts to new possibilities. This week serves as a reminder of the power of exploration to foster understanding and appreciation among people from different backgrounds. As we commemorate this occasion, let's also recognize the resilience of the travel industry in overcoming challenges and adapting to change, and reaffirm our commitment to responsible and sustainable travel practices for the betterment of both present and future generations.
All right, thank you. And now we'll have the reading of the proclamation. And for National Travel and Tourism Week 2024 proclamation, whereas the travel industry is essential to the success of every industry and will continue to be a critical part of the city of Bristol, Virginia's economy, development, and workforce. Whereas travel is an economic powerhouse for every state and destination across the country, with an economic output of $2.8 trillion, supporting 15 million jobs in America. Whereas travel spending supports vibrant and safe communities in Virginia and across the United States by generating $89 billion in state and local tax revenue in 2023 to support essential services such as education, emergency response, public safety, and more. Whereas travel enables success for all industries, including manufacturing, agriculture, defense, healthcare, and more by driving sales growth, innovation, education, and operations that power our economy and our nation and the city of Bristol, Virginia. Whereas visitors to the city of Bristol, Virginia spent $94.5 million in 2022, driving $7.8 million in state and local tax revenues while supporting 1,149 jobs. That's approximately 12% of all employment in the city. Whereas America's travel industry cannot be globally competitive without maximizing growth in leisure, business, and international inbound travelers, increasing travel to and within the United States drives our economy to to a more prosperous future and connects America. Whereas small business account for more than 60% of leisure and hospitality employment. Whereas travel is an essential industry, and we must continue to communicate that growing travel leads to economic growth, benefits businesses, fosters mutual understanding, and connects the nation. Therefore, I, Becky Nave, do hereby claim May 19th through the 25th as National Travel and Tourism Week in the city of Bristol, Virginia, and urge the citizens of Bristol to join me in recognizing the essential role the industry plays in our city and the state of Virginia. Adopted this day, 14th day of May, 2024. So I'm looking for a council motion and second.
I move for approval of the proclamation as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by the Vice Mayor. Council discussion.
Well, I'll just say some of the data points, these numbers in here are staggering. 94.5 million spent in the city of Bristol in 2022. That's some big money that people are coming here to spend.
Yep.
And then supporting 1,149 jobs. That's amazing. So this is worth celebrating.
Yes, it is, and we will see those numbers continue to increase as we have new tourism product continuing to come into the city, and as we know, the casino will open later this year, and I expect those numbers to really go up from that. But also to recognize our small businesses that benefit from tourism as well. It's important that we recognize them, so we appreciate all of you all being here tonight. So with that, now we'll have a roll call.
Farnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. And tonight, Matt Bolus is here with Explore Bristol, and John, come on in, are here with Explore Bristol to accept this proclamation. Okay, next on the agenda, a proclamation to honor and recognize the public work professionals during National Public Works Week, May 19th through the 25th, 2024. Staff report, Randy.
Council, I'm going to turn this over to Jake Chandler, our Public Works Director, and he is in Public Works and handles all the public works here in Bristol. I think it's appropriate for him to give council a little bit of an update.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Eads. Good evening, Council. National Public Works Week is an annual celebration in the United States that honors the essential contributions of public work professionals to their communities. It is typically observed during the third week of May, and it serves as a reminder of the critical role these individuals play in maintaining and improving the infrastructure that supports our daily lives. From road construction and maintenance to waste management, water treatment, and public facilities upkeep, public works professionals ensure the functionality and safety of the built environment. National Public Works Week recognizes their dedication, expertise, and commitment to enhancing the quality of life for all citizens. It also provides an opportunity for communities to express gratitude for the often unseen but indispensable work these individuals perform year-round. I have a sampling of stats for the Public Works Department. The Engineering Division is currently made up of 2 members. They designed the Piedmont Avenue parking improvements, the Piedmont Avenue and Cumberland Street traffic signal analysis and removal, sidewalk designs such as Saratoga Street and Buckner Street, Paulina Drive, and Lee Highway. They facilitated the Gene Malcolm Stadium repair. They oversee new development construction, prepare stormwater designs for upcoming upgrades to the city's infrastructure. They finalized the Lee Highway Phase 1B project for bidding, and they're planning to design future downtown parking improvements. Fleet is made up of 4 mechanics and 1 mechanic helper. They serve 11 departments and provide Virginia State inspections, regular maintenance on vehicles, tire rotation and replacement, electrical repair, and emergency repairs. Last fiscal year, they serviced over 1,400 work orders on approximately 540 pieces of vehicle and equipment ranging from dump trucks, emergency vehicles, and lawn care equipment. 340 pieces of the equipment are tagged and require the Virginia State inspections. Fleet also orders the fuel that's needed for the city, and a mechanic's always on call 24/7. The Streets Division is made up of 10 members. From July 1 to this week, they picked up 625 tons of debris from the streets. 5,575 tons of asphalt has been placed for street resurfacing. 535 tons of asphalt for potholes and curbing has been used. They've installed 7,760 feet of sidewalk. They spent 640 hours of snow removal, 1,370 hours of tree and brush removal, and 1 staff member is always on call 24/7 for emergencies. And Grayson Toller would be here as the city engineer to accept the proclamation.
Okay. All right, great. All right, reading of the proclamation. You want to do that? You want me to?
I would also add too that now solid waste is part of our public works department, and I don't have the specific stats, but solid waste, they keep our city clean and make sure that our residents have a nice, clean city to live in. So I do want to recognize them as well, since they're part of public works now.
Yeah.
And I missed something. Did you ask something, Mayor?
Are you going to read the proclamation?
I
Or you
can.
want me to read it?
Or-
Okay.
I'm on the wrong proclamation. Hold on. A proclamation to honor and recognize the public works professionals during National Public Works Week, May 19th through the 25th, 2024, advancing quality of life for all. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Bristol, Virginia. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation systems, stormwater systems, fleet vehicles, solid waste services, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And where it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Bristol, Virginia, to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, be it now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Becky Nave, Mayor, do hereby designate the week of May 19th through the 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protect our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all.
All right, thank you. And we're looking for a council motion and second.
I move for approval of the proclamation as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by the Vice Mayor Holmes. Council discussion.
That's a lot done by a small staff.
Yeah, I think so many times we think these things, if you don't realize the work that goes into it, things are not just magically done overnight, right? It's like there's a lot of hard work that goes into this. So thank you to our public works staff and our solid waste staff, who we know work around the clock. They work really hard, and I get compliments about them all the time, saying, we see them out working on the streets, working, picking up stuff, whatever it is. We get a lot of compliments on them. So thank you. We don't thank you enough, but thank you all for your hard work. We really appreciate it.
Good job.
Yep. All right, so clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. All right, let's see. If you want to come forward, Jake and Grayson. Yeah. All right, next on the agenda, economic incentives presentation, staff report, Randy.
Council, at a regularly scheduled meeting on March the 11th, 2024, the Industrial Development Authority of Bristol, Virginia voted on a resolution to move forward in presenting to City Council residential and commercial incentives. Tonight, our Economic Development Manager, Mac Chapman, will go over these incentive proposals with Council.
All right.
Good evening, Council. As Mr. Reed said, the IDA was tasked with coming up with incentive framework. Based on the incentives passed in December, we had a couple of council members request that we come up with it. We do have a resolution that we'll look at later on. So tonight we're just doing the presentation. So to kind of give you something to think about as we're going along, these are 6 incentives that we've approved previously. Thinking about where the budget would be if these weren't in the city right now. We have the Indian Motorcycles, Oakmont, Hilton Garden Inn, Bristol Hotel, Sessions Hotel, and the Euclid development. Euclid has Barbaritos, McAllister's, and Popeyes, along with Ultimate Shine. So first thing we'll start with is residential. As you know, we have an issue with not having housing for people in the city right now. So the first thing we want to look at is multifamily. We would look at the difference in the base assessment and a new assessment rebated back to the developer for 5 years. We would tier it at year 1, 100%, year 2, 80%, year 3, 60%, years 4 and 5, 50%. And the requirement would be a $10 million capital investment. And I put an example below, kind of what that means. If, for example, if it's vacant land, if its current assessment's $100,000, the city collects $1,170 annually. New build assessed at $10 million. Year 1 rebate would be $115,830. Year 2 would go down from that. So the real estate tax abatement on rehabilitation for limited single-family dwellings, the structure must be constructed prior to 1970, assessed value less than $65,000 at the time of application. The structure can be demolished if not a Virginia landmark or determined by the Department of Historic Resources not to have a contributory significance if in a registered historic district. If demolished, the replacement structure must be a single-family residence with an assessed value of 120% of the median value of the neighborhood dwellings. Assessed value must be increased by at least 40% and be solely for single-family. Rebate of 100% of the increased assessment for 3 years and 50% for years 4 and 5. The reason we looked at this is, for example, Solar Hill, you would want to keep with the structure of the neighborhood. If someone tears down a house, you don't want something that doesn't fit with the neighborhood going right beside of it. Another option we looked at, to establish a residential tax district with clearly defined boundary lines. Funds are reimbursable to the developer for infrastructure, construction, and land acquisition. The developer would send a letter to the city requesting reimbursement, similar to what we do now with our incentives. IDA would approve the reimbursement if it meets the criteria. Minimum 20 single-family homes must be constructed and completed within 2 years from the date the agreement is signed. It would run for a maximum of 10 years. 10 years would start 1 year after the agreement is signed. Funds are reimbursed 100% of the difference in base assessment and new assessment. The developer must show a need, and the developer must have a good track record. Provide examples of completed projects and any requested support letters. The application, the developer provides completed application with scope of development, must include number of units, capital investment, timeline of project, the name of the builder or development company, current base assessment of property, and the new assessment, and how they arrived at that number. Basically, going toward vacant land, you would have that base assessment and then the new assessment going after that, hopefully to encourage with what land we do have to build whole neighborhoods. Moving into commercial incentives, retail restaurant incentives, the capital investment of at least $250,000, a maximum incentive of 10% of the capital investment or $500,000, and a 5-year maximum term. Things to consider when approving these: will the business cannibalize another business offering the same service? Is it a local or regional draw? The minimum pay offered, and how many employees it'll have. What we're looking at is a no net loss rebate, 50% of the occupancy, the meals or sales over a certain period or minimum payout. If considered a regional draw, we would like to ask if there would be some flexibility on determining the amount, but we would only do that for regional draws. The real estate, for the retail new build, tier the real estate tax rebate, difference in the base, the current assessment and the new assessment. Year 1 and 2, 100% rebate. Year 3 and 4, 90%. Year 5, 80%. The criteria we would ask is minimum $1 million capital investment with 10 full-time employees. The existing structures, the structure must be 20 years old, 100% rebate for 5 years on the difference in current assessment and new assessment. We would look at areas, for example, like Linden Drive, hopefully to bring that back up. And then we also have another one later on that would be geared toward Linden Drive as well. The manufacturing, we put this one in to encourage people to go toward the buildings that are vacant instead of building new buildings at the time. Structure must be 20 years old, 100% rebate for 5 years on the difference in the current assessment and the new assessment. That would encourage a large investment in the property as well. We did look at an incentive for a new structure. The minimum $5 million capital investment, minimum 30 full-time jobs. All jobs must pay $50,000 annually per 2,080 hours worked. We do a 100% rebate for years 1 and 2, 80% rebate for years 3 through 5, and the rebate's the difference in the current assessment and the new assessment. The reason we put this one in here with the jobs and the annual pay, not that we should interfere with what businesses pay, but if you're coming in and asking us for an incentive and taxpayer dollars, then you should have to meet some type of guidelines for that example. Another area we could look at is to establish another tax district for commercial. And it kind of goes along with the tourism tax districts that were passed, I believe, in 2020 or 2021, that encompass Linden Drive, downtown, and the falls. Funds are reimbursable to developer for infrastructure, construction, and land acquisition. The developer would send the letter to the city requesting reimbursement. IDA approval would reimburse if it meets the criteria. We do a maximum of 10 years on that, and the 10 years also starts 1 year after the agreement is signed. Funds are reimbursed at 100% of the difference in base assessment and new assessment, and the developer must also show a good track record, provide examples of previous projects, and any requested letters of support. And an example we would use this in is the Exit 7 territory plan. If we look at developers for this, then we might be able to use something in there because it's going to take a large investment in something like that. You guys have any questions?
All right, thank you very much for that presentation, and I appreciate you and the IDA putting together this package for us to review and discuss. I think it's important. I know that incentives are the way that we've been able to get some other businesses in here before, so it's important to be able to have those. We struggle with that due to our financial situation a lot of times. So I appreciate you all putting in the hard work for that. So I'll open it up for any council questions or discussion.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate you all putting together the framework for this, because we've talked about a framework for a while and we need that. I really like the new residential construction because, again, I've seen a lot of new development in Johnson City and Kingsport and everywhere in between, like Gray and Jonesboro and Boones Creek, and we don't really have a whole lot of that, and we don't have a whole lot of land, a lot of space for that, but we have some spots, and so that would be great to incentivize that. We heard earlier about tourism dollars, and we have a lot of tourism coming in, and some tourists want to stay here and live here, but they can't find a place to live, so that's great, and I really like you had some wording in there about how there is some flexibility. I mean, there is a framework, but there's some flexibility, like you mentioned, if it was a regional draw. Yeah, like if some, say a huge retail store came and said, we're going to bring in $100 million of tax revenue for you over the next, 10 years, but how can we do it? We can, obviously, we want to make sure what's best. And you mentioned those other businesses that are open now, like the hotels, Oakmont, the Euclid Avenue restaurants, McAllister's, Popeyes, and I think even before that, there were some incentives with the Olive Garden and Home Depot, and all of these businesses are open now, providing jobs, providing tax revenues. So incentives can be a good thing if it's looked at in the appropriate way, in a safe way to protect the city, the taxpayer. So, and just one more thing, you mentioned a lot of existing buildings, like areas for redevelopment, Exit 7, Exit 5. We do have a lot of empty buildings, so it's great to encourage new development for new buildings, but when we have some current buildings sitting there that are perfectly good, let's put them to use. So that's great. I think we should do a lot of thinking about this, and so thank you.
Well, Mac, I'll say, I think that Vice Mayor Holmes and myself were folks who were talking about needing some type of framework for incentives. We were talking about the last incentive we did, and I'm blown away by this. I think this is really good. I think this is a very good starting point. Some things that I really liked, I liked talking about having pay requirements for manufacturing incentives. I think that's very important because manufacturers will usually bring a lot of jobs, and if they're going to make a significant investment for their property and a significant investment for their business in the future, we want them to pay the residents who live here a fair wage to work there, especially if they're getting something back for it. So I love that. I particularly liked, as Councilman Farnham talked about, incentives on residential, either on new builds or on rehab. You've seen, particularly in residential rehab tax incentives, a lot of success with that in bigger cities that have seen significant population loss. I think Cleveland, Ohio has a significant program for residential rehab, and they've seen a lot of success with it. So I think that's fantastic. This will be good going forward with this type of framework. We still have some gray area, obviously. We still have some wiggle room with this, but it gives us a more black and white approach, something set down on paper that says, if you meet this, this, and this, we can do something for you, and it will hopefully help us qualify more businesses to get some help, and hopefully not waste anyone's time, our time or the business's time, with requests that might not be realistic. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate the IDA's work on this. I think this is a really big positive thing for us.
I'd like to also kind of echo all that. Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Thank you to the IDA for doing this. This is some good progress, some good framework for us to look at. I'm kind of like Councilman Osborne. I'm a little excited about it. It seems very bold in some aspects, and I think we need that. We need some growth. We need some more folks coming in. We need more businesses, industry coming in. And I think this is a good first step towards that. So thank you all for your work on that.
Thank you.
I like the idea that you have a framework for rehab of low-income, single-family housing. That's something that we haven't had much of in this area. We've had a lot of incentives for businesses, but we have a significant need in this area for improvements in our residential areas. So I really like that. And I really appreciate the work that you've done on this. And I would have some detailed concerns that I'm not sure if you got copied on my email back in March. I would be concerned about one of the flexibility issues that you mentioned about potentially having a deal closing rebate, because that would conflict with the idea of a no net loss arrangement. We've seen some fairly hefty deal closing incentives around here for projects that didn't last very long. So I would be concerned about that. Maybe just some tweaks to make sure that it stays no net loss. And also concerning the idea of rebating sales tax when, except in the DRI, we don't get much of the sales tax, so we don't want to rebate anything that's not ours to give away. And I think I would like to see the incentives scale down over time. Some of the proposed incentives stay 100% for the life of the rebate, but I like the ones that have more of a scaling down over time, like 80-60, 50-50, and perhaps a slight incentive to refurbish over a new build. And that would include, even while I see very much an incentive, a reason for doing a demo and rebuild, perhaps a slight incentive over rehabbing the existing structure as opposed to a full demo, much less the green space. So maybe have three categories there: one for a reno of the existing structure, one for demo and rebuild, and one for green space. Because we've got a lot of good housing, of existing housing, that a lot of it just needs to have a good refurbishing. And perhaps, I'm sorry for taking a lot of time with my ideas. Did you get a copy of my email by any chance?
I think I did, but it was, that we kind of removed that deal closing.
Okay.
That's not included in it.
Okay. And also I would suggest having the minimum pay. I think that's a great idea, but perhaps have it based on something rather than a preset amount, so that we don't have to revisit it periodically. Something such as twice the minimum wage, which would be currently $24 an hour, or $48,000 a year. But then as the minimum wage increases, that amount then automatically gets adjusted rather than having to revisit it. Or perhaps basing it on the federal poverty guideline. 250% of the federal poverty guideline for a family of two would currently be $49,300 a year. That way, again, it doesn't have to be revisited. With the federal poverty guideline, that gets adjusted annually rather than the somewhat intermittent increases in the minimum wage. I like some things that are more calculated rather than having to be argued over regularly.
Gotcha.
Also, you've got the categories of retail, restaurant, and manufacturing in your businesses. I think professional offices should be considered in that as well.
Okay.
Professional offices can be very high income, so I think that would be a good thing to incentivize as well.
Okay.
All right.
But I
Thank
think
you
this is a
again.
great start. I really appreciate the work you've done on this.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again. We appreciate you all putting this together, and we look forward to discussing it more with you. All right. Next, joint public hearing with the Planning Commission for updates to Chapter 50, Article 2, zoning. We'll now open the public hearing, and I will ask Mr. Shue to come up and open it for the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I want to thank whoever gave Popeyes the incentive, because without it, my 6-year-old would starve. I open the meeting.
All right, no one has signed up for public comment in this time, so we'll look for the staff report from Jay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So community development staff from time to time will do a review of the zoning ordinance to look at any potential updates. I like to try to do this on an annual basis. The last update was in 2023 when we added some new definitions to the code. So staff has completed another review of the ordinance, and with the help of the Planning Commission is presenting the following updates for discussion. And I do want to kind of preface this that I have heard a few comments from members of the City Council. And since this is just the public hearing where it's really just giving out the information, those types of things will be incorporated into my staff report to the Planning Commission on May 20th at their next meeting. So what comes back to you in an ordinance may look slightly different, but it'll be basically the same. There might be a few updates here and there. The first is to look at mini storage, mini warehousing. These two terms are used interchangeably in the ordinance, and the use is permitted in B3, M1, M2, and the flexible redevelopment district. Currently, we don't have a definition for mini storage, only the mini warehouse definition, even though they kind of are thrown around interchangeably. Staff would like to remove the mini warehouse, mini storage definition, rename the whole thing to self-storage, because that is kind of more fitting of what it does, and remove it as a permitted use in the B3 district. So basically, it would change the definition and allow only in the M1, M2, and the FRD districts. Secondly, it would be to add the following definitions when it comes to casino gambling to the city code. So we have casino gaming, a casino gaming establishment, and a casino gaming operator. These definitions are taken directly from state code, which is what I typically do if the state already has one. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Currently, casino gambling is permitted in a B3 district as part of the indoor amusement and entertainment facility definition. I'd like to just kind of remove that reference there and create a casino gaming establishment use all by itself. The third update would be a subsection in 50-23, which would state that properties which are created when a government body vacates a right-of-way will be assigned the zoning district in which the property lies. It's kind of an accepted practice now. If you vacate a right-of-way, it automatically becomes property, owned by a citizen, and it becomes part of that zoning district. We just kind of assume that it does. This will actually put it in code. The next update would be when it comes to special use permits. The current section reads that construction or operation shall begin or commence within 1 year of the date of the issuance of the special use permit, or it shall become void. So basically, when you get the special use permit, you have a year to either begin construction or open that business. Staff would like to add language that would allow for the approval of a site plan within a year to count as commencement of a project. While we don't typically have this issue, there are some larger, more involved projects that might be coming up that sometimes this site plan approval takes a little bit longer than your typical. So we want to make sure that these projects are able to go through the process and get that approval within the year as opposed to just beginning the construction. So I'd like to add that, and then in conjunction, then say that the project would need to begin work within 6 months of that site plan approval, so that we are moving projects forward and they're not just sitting there. Because right now, if you get that special use permit and you don't begin within a year, you theoretically have to come back again to go through the whole process again. Finally, basically I want to bring up something when it comes to skill games. I don't know if anybody's aware, skill games have been kind of a hot topic with the Virginia legislature this year. They were illegal in Virginia, then they were legal, then they were illegal again. just the first part of the definition is it means an electronic, computerized, or mechanical contrivance, terminal, machine, or other device that requires the insertion of a coin, currency, ticket, token, or other similar object to operate, activate, or play a game. You would see some of these at some of the convenience stores. You can see them around. As I mentioned, they are currently illegal in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There was some legislation that was going through the General Assembly that was passed, was sent to the governor. He sent it back to the General Assembly with amendments. Some of those amendments would basically keep it from being in Bristol anyway. The first one would be that it would eliminate the possibility of being skill games because they would not be permitted within a 35-mile radius of licensed casinos. Another restriction would place a 2,500-foot buffer around schools and churches. So either of those right there would pretty much eliminate Bristol to have skill games. However, we feel that it is probably best to go ahead and get this definition into the city code because just because it may not go through this year does not mean it won't go through in the future. So when working with the Planning Commission, we felt that just using this Code of Virginia skill game definition, adding that they are regulated by agencies within the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then permitting them in the M1 and M2 zoning districts only. And that is all. Thank you.
All right, staff report. Any other things? Nope, okay. So I'll now close the public hearing, and I will ask Mr. Shue to do the same. All right. All right, next we have award continuing services contract, bridge and infrastructure safety assessment and maintenance program. Staff report, Tamara.
Members of council, this agenda item is to award the continuing services contract, bridge and infrastructure safety assessment and maintenance program. The request for proposals for continuing services contract, bridge and infrastructure safety assessment and maintenance program was issued on March 21st, 2024, with proposals due prior to 2:00 p.m. on April 1st, 2024. The RFP was advertised on the city's website and Virginia's electronic procurement site, EVA. 2 proposals were received. An evaluation committee consisting of the Director of Public Works, the city engineer, and the civil engineer transportation evaluated the proposals based upon the evaluation criteria as listed in the request for proposal. The rankings were finalized and competitive negotiations began with the offerer ranked number 1, Schwartz and Associates Incorporated. A contract acceptable to the city was negotiated. Staff recommends that council approve the award of the continuing services contract, bridge and infrastructure safety, assessment and maintenance program to Schwartz and Associates Incorporated, and authorize the city manager or his designee the authority to enter into a contract with Schwartz and Associates Incorporated per the request for proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're looking for a council motion and second.
I move for approval of the continuing services contract with Schwartz and Associates Incorporated as presented.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by Councilmember Farnum. Council discussion. All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. All right, next we'll move to the closed session on the agenda. Pursuant to Section 2.2-3711, period A1, Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of a specific public officer, appointee, or employees of the public body, personnel, pursuant to 2.2-3711, period A7, Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, consultation with legal counsel, and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiation or litigating posture of the public body, and consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, legal matter, landfill, and abortion resolution. I'm looking for a council motion and second.
I move that we enter into closed session for the reasons stated.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by the Vice Mayor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Call vote. Council members certify that only business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements as specified in the motion to convene in executive session were discussed. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the personnel recommendations from the city manager.
Second.
As discussed, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Osborne and a second by the Vice Mayor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Okay, moving into the next part of the agenda, presentation of FY24 quarterly financial update. Staff report. Tamara?
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor and members of council, this is the finance update for the third quarter of fiscal year 2024. Data for the quarter ended March 31st, 2024. This data is prepared on the cash basis. Revenues the city has received and expenditures the city has paid. And this is unaudited data. So the general fund summary with a budget of $72.2 million. Revenues of $53.6 million, 74% of budget. Expenditures of $50.7 million, 70% of budget, for a balance, a fund surplus of $2.9 million. This surplus does include a beginning balance rollover of approximately $1.3 million. So if you back that out, the surplus is $1.6 million. Solid waste disposal summary with a budget of $43.56 million, revenues of $35 million, 81% of budget, expenditures of $21.7 million, 50% of budget, for a balance there of $13.5 million. We'll have a little more detail about the solid waste disposal fund shortly. Local capital projects fund with a budget of $1.6 million. Revenues of $1.156 million, 71% of budget. Expenditures of $1.173 million, 72% of budget, for a fund deficit there of $17,619. And this is due to the federal grant revenue for the police vehicles. We've not received that revenue as of the end of March. That's why the fund there is in a deficit. State and federal capital projects fund with a budget of $14.9 million, revenues of $656,774, 4% of budget, and expenditures of less than $200,000, 1% of budget, for a balance there of $467,466. And that's due to VDOT receivables at year end, the previous year end, that were received in August. And the budget variance there is just due to the timing of those capital projects. Transit fund with a budget of $1.07 million, revenues of $657,009, or 61% of budget, and expenditures of $467,604, 44% of budget, for a balance there of $189,405. The COVID-19 federal funds with a budget of $4.268 million, revenues of $4.265 million, 99.94% of budget, consisting primarily of ARPA monies we received in a previous fiscal year and we had rolled over. Expenditures of $4.2 million there, almost 100% of budget, for a small balance there of $15,840. This fund will be closed at year end, and any remaining funds will revert to the general fund for expenditure there next fiscal year. This is what our general fund revenue looks like. Our local revenue is 70% of general fund revenue collections, and it's 71% of budget, so right in line there. State revenue is 24% of revenue collections. It's shown in red, and it is 24% of budget. The green shows the federal revenue for the city. It's 5% of general fund revenue collections, and it is 5% of the budget. And other financing sources, that small sliver there shown in yellow, consist of transfers from the local capital projects fund, which was different for FY24, and it's 1% of our revenue. Some financial data graphs. Fiscal year 20 is shown in gray, fiscal year 21 in yellow. The red is fiscal year '22, and the green is fiscal year '23, and then the blue is the current fiscal year. Local sales and use tax, you can see, are up across all periods. Cigarette taxes are up from FY '23, but down compared to other prior years. The lodging taxes through March of this year are up from all periods shown, as are the restaurant meal taxes. And once again, you can see that those graphs are very similar, the shape of those graphs. This graph and the next one show our taxes that had a rate increase for this year and show where we would be without that rate increase. FY '24 is shown in the dark green, and then FY '24 in the red is what it would have been if the rate had not changed. For admissions tax, you can see the FY '24 is up from 2023, but if the rate had stayed the same, we would actually see a decrease for that revenue source. The same is true for the cigarette tax. FY '24 is up. That dark green is up from the previous year, but would have been a decrease if not for the rate increase. Here's the lodging tax, and it is up from all periods. That dark green FY '24 is up from all periods, but if you back out the rate increase, and that's shown in red, it is a slight increase from '23, but it is an increase, but it's very slight. The meals tax, the actual again up across all periods, but if you back out that rate increase, it is actually a slight decrease from FY '23. Once again, less than 3%, but it is a slight decrease. And once again, those two taxes do show the same movement. This is what our sales tax revenue with a budget of $5.65 million looks for FY '24 looks like it is received by the city. The blue is the 3-year average, and the orange line is the current year, FY '24. Sales taxes run 2 months behind, meaning that March receipts are for January collections. The meals tax budget with the meals tax with a budget of $9.7 million. It is our largest budgeted other local tax. And this is what it looks like as that revenue comes in for the city. It runs 1 month behind, meaning March recognized revenue is actually for the month of February. Lodging tax with an annual budget of $2.9 million. Collections for lodging run 1 month behind. In October, you can see, gets a large boost compared to other months due to a large significant event in September for the city. Our general fund expenditure summary for the year: if all expenditures were paid evenly throughout the year for the city, at March, the benchmark would be 75%. Expenditures for March 31st, government administration are at 72%. Judicial administration is at 68%, and that is due to some JASP expenditures below budget and vacancy savings that we've seen in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Public safety is at 75%. Public works is at 51%, and that is due to the timing of certain projects, primary extension and VDOT funded projects. Health, welfare, and social services, 73%. Education is at 81% due to the timing of requested local funds. Parks, recreation, and cultural is at 66%, just due to the timing of expenditures in those categories. The spring is a time when we see, spring and into summer is when we see those expenditures increase there. Community development is at 49%, and that budget variance is due to a return of state funds that were budgeted to be returned in this fiscal year, which we actually returned in the previous fiscal year. Non-departmental is at 80% due to the timing of our insurance payments. Our debt is at 80%, once again, due to the timing of our debt expenditures. And the transfers are at 64%, due primarily to the timing of the solid waste transfer and the transfer for the DRI. We transfer those monies out to the IDA being slightly below budget. So once again, total expenditures through March 31st, $50.7 million, 70% of budget. So this is what our general fund expenditures look like. This is how the city's general fund spends its money. Public safety is at 27.67%. Health, welfare, and social services is at 14.29%. Education is at 12.9% of expenditures. Our debt is at 9.76%. Government administration, slightly over 9% of general fund expenditures. Public works is at 8.43%. Our transfers are at 8.09%. Parks, recreation, and cultural, just over 4%. Judicial administration, 3.08%. Community development, 1.44%. And non-departmental, slightly less than 1%. How the city's money is expended. Transitioning, to some additional solid waste information. The cash balance in the solid waste operating account at March 31st, $971,082. Back in the fall, when the city borrowed the money, the city reimbursed itself for project expenditures, which is why that fund is showing a positive cash balance. We anticipate as we continue on through the fiscal year that positive balance will reduce. Collection revenue is at 57%, and the first billing for the increased trash rate in this fiscal year was received in the fall, actually in October. Disposal expenditures are at 48%. That budget variance is below the 75% benchmark, primarily because of the timing of budgeted project expenses. The operations side is in line with where we would be, except for two categories, professional services and utilities, which continue to be a challenge for the solid waste disposal fund. Collection expenditures are at 42% expended. We do have 3 garbage collection trucks on order. One is a lease, and 2 council previously approved a cash payment for that. Those are on order and have not been received or expended yet, and that's driving that budget variance down there a little bit. Debt expenditures are at 87%, and it's important to always note that before we had these issues with the landfill projects, debt was 30% of the solid waste fund budget, and right now it's at 6%. The Falls Phases 2 and 3 update. Budgeted revenues are $937,629. Our actual revenues through March 31st are at $944,650, 101%, which is a positive budget variance. Debt allocated to the Falls, we budget a little over $4 million, and just based on the timing, we're at $3.135 million, 77%. The revenue sharing for the Falls, the city's final payment for that obligation was paid in July of 2023 at $46,415. So we budget for a deficit there in this fiscal year of right at $3.2 million, and through March 31st, we're at a deficit of $2.2 million. This is the city's planned debt schedule. This schedule does include the 2023 general obligation bonds paying off in FY 2028 without being refinanced. And that will be a challenge for the city, but this is our current debt service plan. And you can see that note there at the bottom in 27-28 that $30.7 million is due. You can see here the debt escalation and the use of committed reserve funds to offset the escalation, with additional monies being needed in FY 26. And the interim borrowing that we did for landfill projects really impacted our debt plan that we had in place. This is what it looks like now, and this is what we're going to operate off of. Before the landfill projects interim financing, the debt grew to 7.6. You can see here it grows to 8.9. And previously, we had debt service coverage into fiscal year 28, and now in FY 26, we'll be needing additional funds. Once again, this is the city's current debt service plan and what we will operate off of. The city's operating cash balance for the general fund, solid waste, transit fund, and the capital funds. The balance at March 31st, 2024 was $25,474,951. You can see 1 year ago, March 2023, that balance was $26.9 million. In 2022, 23.6. In 2021, 20.6 million. In March of 2020, 17.6 million. And in March of 2019, the cash balance was 16 million. And going back to 2018, 9.9 million. We do have reserve balances, 1.57 in our general reserve, and our debt service reserve, 3.32 million. And we always show, or typically quarterly show, the TAN information, the historic TAN information. Going back, you can see the fiscal year 14, we were, the city was borrowing $7.6 million to just pay its bills. So certainly the city has challenges that we're addressing through the budget process, but still you can see from this slide the city's made significant progress in getting off the TAN and having a good cash balance on hand to pay our bills. So council, this concludes the presentation of the March 31st, 2024 financial data. Thank you, council, and please let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you for that financial update. I'll open it up for council discussion. All right, thank you, Ms. Spradlin. All right, next we'll move into ordinances. The first reading of an ordinance to repeal Chapter 86, Article X of the City Code. No one has signed up for public comment on that one. Staff report, Randy or Jay? Okay.
Council, attempting to enforce the city ordinance dealing with property maintenance, the staff has determined that there are two separate articles in Chapter 86 of Article 10 which govern inoperable vehicles. On June the 14th, 2005, an ordinance was enacted detailing the procedure for the identification, notification, and removal of inoperable vehicles on private property in the city. At the time, there was an existing inoperable vehicle ordinance from 1966, which was not repealed and is in conflict with the current 2005 ordinance and the Code of Virginia 15.2-904. The attached ordinance repeals the 1966 sections and brings the city in compliance with the current Code of Virginia. So this would be the first reading of the ordinance, and the second reading would be at the next council meeting.
All right, we're looking for a council motion and second for first reading of the ordinance, and it can be by full or by caption only.
I move for first reading of the ordinance by caption only.
Okay?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by Councilmember Pollard. And so, and by caption only.
By caption only.
Yep. Council discussion. All right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Reading of the ordinance by caption only.
Ordinance 24-8, an ordinance to repeal Chapter 86, Article 10, inoperable vehicles. That's it.
All right. An ordinance to repeal City Code Chapter 50, Article 4 in its entirety and reenact a new City Code Chapter 50, Article 4 pertaining to the State of Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Program regulation. Public comments? No one has signed up for public comment. Staff report, Randy.
I'm going to pass it off to Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Eads.
All right.
The city adopted the current erosion sediment control and stormwater management regulations found in the City Code, Chapter 50, Article 4 in 2014. The state of Virginia at a 2023 State Water Control Board meeting approved and adopted the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation and approved the repeal of the erosion sediment control regulations, the erosion sediment control and stormwater management certification regulations, and the Virginia Stormwater Management Program regulation. The new state regulation and the repeal of the other regulations will be effective July 1, 2024, and as such, the city must also repeal the current regulations and adopt the new requirements in the new regulations.
All right. We're looking for a council motion and second for the first reading of the ordinance, full or by caption.
I move for first reading of the ordinance by caption only.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by the Vice Mayor. Council discussion. Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Reading of ordinance by caption only.
Ordinance 24-6, an ordinance to repeal and reenact Chapter 50, Article 4, Stormwater Management and Erosion and Settlement Control.
All right, an ordinance to amend City Code Appendix to Chapter 70, Paragraph 1A pertaining to solid waste fees. No one has signed up for public comment. Staff report. Randy.
Council, the purpose of this ordinance is to decrease the monthly residential collection fee from $48 to $38 effective July 1, 2024. Pursuant to Code of Virginia 58.1-3007, notice was properly given of a public hearing on a proposed tax rates and solid waste fees for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. The notice of public hearing was published in the Bristol Herald-Courier on Saturday, April 13, 2024, and citizens were given an opportunity to appear before the local governing body at the April 23, 2024 regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
All right, I'm looking for a council motion and second for first reading of the ordinance by full or by caption.
I move for first reading for this ordinance by caption only.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Farnum and a second by Councilman Pollard. Council discussion.
Just real quick, I'll throw out there, this is something that we've heard from a lot of citizens about over the past year. We know last year the trash rate went up, and we know it was high, and we've had a lot of expenses at the landfill, and we still do have a lot of expenses at the landfill, but we want to listen to our citizens. This is something they have to pay every single month. Hopefully this gives some sort of relief to the residents.
I'm very glad to see that we're doing this. The trash fee is something that every single person in the city is required to pay if they have electricity. So this is something that will literally help everybody. So I'm very glad to see that we're doing it. You know, I think that this has always been the stated goal of this city council, is to reduce the trash rates as soon as we could. And you know, I'll be real with you. I don't think it'll ever get down to $11 or $22 like it was previously, but I'm glad we can get back down in the 30s. And you know, that's thanks to the hard work of the folks who set this budget or who designed this budget, the finance department, the city manager and assistant city manager, and you know, we're very appreciative of the work on the budget from them, and I'm glad we're able to do this.
Yeah, this is something that we have been working on, honestly, since we had to raise it last year. Figuring out how we could get it back down lower. And it's something also that we have heard from our residents. I mean, I feel like every one of us have heard from somebody about it, either weekly or monthly, about how high our trash rates are. We know they're high, they're still high. But at least we can get it back down, even lowering it $10. I feel like we'll have a huge impact on a lot of our families that are struggling to pay it. So I'm really happy that we are able to do that.
And I'll just add, I'm excited to see this as well. I know, as everyone has said, everyone has been feeling the pinch from the higher trash rate, so it's great to see it drop $10. I will say this is thanks to the work of staff. I know the state is putting in $26.5 million to the city. That is not going to the rates. Unfortunately, that's going straight to the landfill. But thank you to the staff for working so hard on finding a way forward to lower these rates. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Reading of the ordinance by caption only.
Ordinance 24-5, an ordinance to amend City Code Appendix to Chapter 70, Paragraph 1A pertaining to solid waste fees.
All right. Number 4, an ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 78, Article 7, Section 78-202 pertaining to the tax on purchased meals, levy, and amount. We do have some signed up for public comment, so as I call your name, please come up and state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. You'll have a green light, then a yellow light that signifies you have a few minutes left, and then a red light that your time is up. The first one on our list is Joe Deal.
Hello, thanks for listening to me today. I just wanted to speak out against the meals tax. Own a small restaurant downtown. It's tough right now. The economy's tough. It's tough to be competitive when you have a state line on the other side with a lower tax. I know this is a pass-through, so we get this. It's just to the customer, but our customers now do know about this tax. I've been in business a little over 11 years. I don't feel like most people look at their receipt and see this tax. In the 11 years I've been there, I've heard, for probably 10 years I didn't hear about it. The last year I hear a lot. A lot of people circle it. They ask my servers, they'll come to me and ask me what this tax is. I tell them I don't make the taxes, I just take them in. But I'm starting to see it affect our business now. I've seen Facebook posts where people are saying, hey, we should boycott downtown due to the Bloom issues, and people are starting to realize that this isn't just a tourism tax. A lot of local people, I have a fellow who eats with me 5 days a week. So when you're doing a meals tax, a prepared meals tax, it isn't just for your tourists. A lot of local people eat out several times a week. I see some of you guys in my restaurant. I know you all eat there. So, you know, this tax, it is a lot. Everyone knows it's one of the highest in the country. If we add this 1%, we will be the highest prepared meals tax in the whole United States. That's not something I want to brag about. I love our city. I love being part of it. I love my restaurant. I like the people I deal with. But it is a hard time right now, and if there was ever a time not to add another tax, to me it would be right now. I've talked to other business owners, just spoke to a man who's opening a restaurant in the area, and he told me specifically he didn't want to be downtown, he didn't want to be in the city. He is going to the Pinnacle to open. And I think we'll only have more of that. I want to see more downtown restaurants. We have 2 nice buildings that are open right now. I don't understand the allure. Why would someone want to move there when they could go across the street and not pay that tax? I grandfathered in it. I bought into it and I knew what I had when I got there. But why would another business, we want to recruit businesses. I don't understand why a business would come down there. If I had the option right now and there was a building on the other side of the street, I would probably go there. I mean, it's just a business move. We're all here to try to make the bottom dollar. I just wanted to give my 2 cents in. I appreciate everything y'all do, and I understand it's a bottom line. We have to have our budget met, and you all just do what you got to do. I understand that. I'll deal with it. I'll still be there, but it is what it is. I appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Denise Myers.
Hello, I'm Denise Myers. I live at 324 Galway Road in Bristol, Tennessee. But I do work for Vision LLC, and we own properties in Bristol, Tennessee and Bristol, Virginia. And I would like to thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, and City Manager, and other distinguished leaders here for all of your hard work. Certainly a lot of wonderful things have been acknowledged this evening, a lot of hard work, a lot of diligent effort, and I really appreciate that. I did also want to speak with you specifically about the meal tax. As I mentioned, Vision is a large property owner, and we have clients that are in Tennessee and Virginia. We are fortunate to have restaurants on both sides of the street, and we have restaurants in Bristol, Virginia, who are expressing a significant concern about the impact of this tax on their businesses. Specifically, new restaurants that we have been fortunate to be able to attract and bring to the Bristol area are now looking, as their leases are being renewed, at leaving Bristol. And I've got one that comes up later this year, and they're looking hard at going to Johnson City. It's one that we love. We fought hard to get here, and they are, you know, they've had a lot of, they're the only one of, they're an ethnic restaurant, and they're the only one that's here in our area. They are, previously when they first got here, they were attracting people from Johnson City, from all over to come and eat here, but their customers are significantly complaining about the tax. And then to try to drive here, to try to drive to Bristol, leave Johnson City, come here and choose to eat here, and then pay 35% on top of it by the time they tip their staff, it's becoming very concerning to them. And so not only does it decrease the business that those folks have, but it also impacts their staff that work there. It impacts their wait staff. Their tips get decreased. They don't have the money to be able to take home and pay their own bills. when that happens. So on behalf of those folks, we try to stand up for our clients that are here, represent them, attract new businesses. We're working very hard for that. We have another new business, as many of you are aware, that's opening hopefully by the end of this month in Bristol, Virginia, and it's challenging for them. So respectfully, I would like to request that you don't increase this tax. I've seen the slides. It's impressive to look and see, hey, look at what this has done. But there is a place where it starts to go away. And I'm not sure if that number is reflective on what was charged and what was collected in tax. When I look at it and I do the math, if it's what was charged, then there's a deficit on what was collected by the things that we already know, the monies that weren't collected. So that alone would take that out of there. But respectfully, just like for you to seriously consider that even another 1% would be potentially detrimental. Our company was in favor when the initial tax was being proposed, and as that first came in there and what that could do to help offset some of the deficits that were there. But as it's continued to grow, as Joe mentioned, we can't be the highest in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into the staff report. Randy?
Yes. Council, the purpose of this ordinance is to increase the tax on purchased mills from 10% to 11% effective July 1, 2024. This additional funding is necessary to provide operational and capital resources for general government services, including but not limited to public safety, education, health and welfare, streets, and parks and recreation. Previous relevant action was pursuant to Code of Virginia 58.1-3007. Notice was properly given of a public hearing on a proposed tax rates and solid fees for 2024-2025. The notice of public hearing was published in the Bristol Herald-Courier on Saturday, April 13th, 2024, and citizens were given an opportunity to appear before the local governing body at the April 23rd, 2024 regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
All right. I know we want to have some discussion on this, but before we get to that, we must have a motion and a second for the first reading of the ordinance by full or by caption only.
And council, let me just remind everyone, a vote for yes on this increases the tax rate. A vote for no leaves the tax rate at 10%.
I move for first reading of the ordinance by caption only.
Second.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Osborne and a second by Councilmember Pollard. Council discussion.
Well, I just want to say I don't think we can do this at this time. And I'll admit, my understanding of this has evolved over time. When we first started looking at the budget, I thought, okay, what's 1 more percent? That's not that much. But I do think you could make the argument when a tax or a fee or a cost gets to a certain point, I don't remember the exact economic term, but there's actually a shift where, say, for instance, in this case, customers actually start to pull back. Everything's expensive, groceries, gas. So I think you can make the argument where people know the tax is going up and they decide to stay home. And that not only hurts the small business by having less customers, less revenue. In a way, you could argue, well, the tax rate's higher, but we're bringing in less taxes because people aren't eating out anymore. So I know we've talked about this and we've gone back and forth about it, and I do believe that is true. We are up there near the highest in the country. So, we've got time to, obviously we have to make a balanced budget, and we can try to put our heads together to just adjust and move some money around and then just leave it the same.
I'll go ahead and jump in. We as a city, we have limited options, limited levers to pull, so to speak, to fund the government, to fund the services. And last several years, we've been stuck between a rock and a hard place with everything going on. So we've tended to push those levers far. We've had to pay for things. We've had to pay our debts. However, I do think that you can push those too far. And I think this additional percent might be that too far moment that we're hitting. And the economic policy you were talking about, I'm a political science nerd. It's the Laffer curve, named after Art Laffer, the political economist. When you put the tax rate so high, you start losing taxes. So I got to meet him a couple months ago, so it was really cool. Side note. So I think at this point, I think moving the meals tax up 1 more % is a bad move for us. We're hearing from our businesses. We're hearing from our restaurants downtown. We hear you on this. We don't want to put you guys in a bad spot. We don't want to put you guys out of business. I know it is a pass-through, but it has impacted customers where they choose to go, where they choose to eat. So we definitely want to keep you guys in business. Want to keep those folks spending money here. So I cannot support this.
I have a couple questions about this for the city manager and assistant city manager. Just for clarification for everyone in the audience and watching at home, and please allow me this line of thinking. Do we have a structurally balanced budget this year?
No.
No. How much did it require to pull over from the beginning balance to work?
Roughly $925,000.
$925,000.
925.
We're actually pulling more from that. We're structurally unbalanced by that
Right.
amount.
So we're structurally unbalanced, and we are pulling over $925,000 from beginning balance. What does a 1% increase in meals tax equate to?
Roughly $750,000.
$750,000. So if we were, let's say we leave the meals tax at 10%, would we then, for numbers' sake, add 925,000 and 750,000 together and say that's the shortfall that we're looking at?
Yes.
Would that be a fair way to say that? So that'd be about $1.5 million?
Yes. In addition to everything else that we're pulling from beginning balance too. But the 925 is the number where we're structurally unbalanced at.
So we would be structurally unbalanced to the tune of $1.5 million without a 1% increase. How do we make up for that?
Well, I think there's several options. The main option is you pull from beginning balance to make up for it and hope it's just a one-time thing, and you hope over the next year that sales continue to increase, the economy doesn't go into a doldrum, and that people continue to eat out in Bristol. At this point, you would have to probably cut something that's in the budget. We've been over a couple of different options. One would be you would hold off on purchasing police cars until probably September, and then we will hopefully have some information on some federal funding, and then you would push back a capital purchase for the fire department, roughly $220,000. You would push that back in the next year's budget.
So my next question is for the assistant city manager. In the quarterly financial report that we just looked at, the chart that shows what 2023, 2024 actuals are, whether they're at the current tax rate or if they're at the previous tax rate. If we're at the previous tax rate on meals tax, we've actually generated less money than we would have if we had raised the meals tax to 10, right?
Yes.
So would that be correct that if everything was the same, we'd have the same amount of roughly people going out to eat, spending money, the same amount as previous year? So it's not increased in terms of raw numbers. It's increased because we raised the taxes last year.
Correct. It was a slight decrease on the meals.
Right.
Decrease, yes.
Right. This is a very hard ask. I understand the concern of business owners who don't want to see an increased meals tax. I understand that fully. I also understand the concern of residents that I've heard from that don't want to pay an increased meals tax. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't cook very much at home. I eat out a lot. I pay a lot of meals taxes. We have a fiduciary responsibility to run this city and run this government. And it is very difficult to run this government when we are, for the first time in 6 years in office, producing a structurally unbalanced budget. It's a very hard ask for me to not find a way to fund police cars and fire department infrastructure requests. That's very hard. I'm not sure what I'm going to do here in a few minutes when we vote on this. But I just wanted to go over these numbers and make sure I understand the gravity of the situation, so I appreciate it.
Well, I can tell you why I seconded the motion. That is simply because I saw it as we have a decision, either we increase the meals tax by 1%, or we increase or leave at its previous level, the trash rate, by $10 a month. And I saw one as being voluntary, the other as not being voluntary and being very difficult on our lower income residents. Out of balance, difficult on our lower income residents. And that was why I made that decision at that time, because I see that a lot of people are being hurt by the high trash rates.
Well, I feel, number one, we wanted to lower the trash rate, so that was a goal, I think, across the board that we were all working on. But I do believe that, as you all were talking about, we've kind of met that max of what we can do right now on the meals tax. I don't want, as Joe spoke about, being the highest in the nation. That's something, I don't want us to be the highest in the nation. I don't want it to hurt our businesses. And I think for the things that we may have to look at waiting a little bit on, and we're not saying no to the things that are in the budget that we're going to have to cut in order to keep the meals tax the same. We're just saying we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer. And we also have some grant applications out there to cover those specific things, to cover police cars and to cover other items that we may have to just hold off on for a few months. We're not saying no, but to hold off on. And I feel like it's more important to try to take care of our small businesses in our community that have reached out nonstop. I have talked to many business owners in the past 2 months about this meals tax and how they feel, especially after what happened with Bloom. It really brought attention to what our meals tax, how high it is. So I'm in favor of not raising the meals tax and keeping it the same, and looking at, hopeful that we'll get these grants from the federal government that we've applied for. We've put in some good applications, and I feel good about them. So I'm going to go on that, and hopefully they will then cover the things that we have to hold off on for a few months. No.
I just want to clarify something. We previously have passed the trash rate at $38, so that will not be impacted by this vote.
No, it will not.
Okay.
Right.
Question before we proceed to the vote. A yes vote is for raising to 11%, a no vote is for keeping it 10%.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, no further discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum,
No.
Holmes,
No.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
I guess I'll go with no.
Nave.
No. All right. So next, an ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 78, Article 4, Section 78-172 pertaining to transit room rental tax, levy, and amount. No one has signed up for public comment. Staff report, Randy.
Hang on just a second.
Okay. We don't have to vote on it because we didn't change it, right? I mean, we don't have to read the ordinance.
No.
I've got 2 more, but they're. Yeah. We didn't say.
I want to make sure you saw that.
Yeah. I'll get
Counsel,
with
just to clarify, this is failed on first reading. We did not read the ordinance, so we probably need to read the ordinance into the record before we go on to the next item.
Okay.
And we'll have to do a second vote as well at the next meeting for this. You don't think so? Let me research. We may not have to do a second reading, but I'll double check.
Okay, so reading of the ordinance by caption only?
Yes, ordinance 24-4, an ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 78, Article 7, Section 78-202 pertaining to tax on purchased mills, levy, and amount.
All right. So ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 78, Article 4, Section 78-172 pertaining to the transient room rental tax, levy, and amount. No one signed up for public comment. Staff report, Randy.
The purpose of this ordinance is to increase the transient room rental tax from 13% to 15% effective July 1, 2024. This additional funding is necessary to provide operational and capital resources for general government services, including but not limited to public safety, education, health and welfare, streets, and parks and recreation. Pursuant to Virginia Code 58.1-3007, there was a notice of public hearing that was published in the Bristol Herald-Courier on Saturday, April 13th, 2024, and citizens were given an opportunity to appear before the local governing body at the April 23rd, 2024 regularly scheduled City Council meeting.
All right.
And I would just say a vote of yes here increases the rate, a vote of no leaves it at the same.
Okay. We're looking for a council motion and second for the first reading of ordinance, full or by caption.
Move to approve by caption only.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Pollard and a second by Councilman Osborne. Council discussion.
This is actually something that I had asked for last year. I said that if we are going to raise our meals tax to a total of 15.3%, we need to do similarly with the lodging tax. The lodging tax is, unlike the meals tax, the lodging tax is almost exclusively paid by visitors. If we're going to inflict that much pain on our residents, we need to at least have a similar rate on lodging. So I'm glad to, I have no problem supporting that increase this year to make them the same. Now, I think both of them, when we can afford to do so, both of them need to be lowered again, especially the meals tax. Long term, I would like to see that meals tax to be brought down to 4%, which we have no way of doing at this point. But that way, the sales tax, total sales tax at the register would be the same on either side of the state line. Mm-hmm. That's a long-term goal.
I was just going to say I agree with what you're saying, how, well, the meals tax is something that's paid by both visitors and residents here when they go out to eat, but the lodging tax is almost exclusively paid by visitors. And we love visitors. We love tourism dollars when they come into our city and people visit and they spend money. And, you know, if we can lower the trash rate for every resident in the city, but we have to raise the tax 2% on a hotel room for a visitor, I'm not saying I don't like visitors, but I'm okay with that.
All right. Well, it's not a tax I would like to raise either. I don't want to raise it, but we are at that point to where we have to figure out the best way to try to balance our budget. And this is one of those ways. It's not something that will have a direct impact on our residents and will be paid by our visitors. And so, again, looking at the future, it's something I'd like to see come down in the future, but it's the point we're at right now. All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. Reading of ordinance by caption only.
Ordinance 24-3, an ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 78, Article 6, Section 78-172 pertaining to transient room rental tax, levy, and amount.
All right, budget ordinance for year 24-25. We have one person signed up for comment, but he might be gone. Chris Knupp. Okay, he is no longer here. Staff report, Randy.
Pursuant to Section 10.03 of the City Code of Bristol, Virginia, on April 9th, 2024, the city manager submitted his annual budget estimate for fiscal year 2024-2025, including a bound document detailing the proposed budget ordinance and other required information. The budget ordinance requires 2 readings. The second reading and the final adoption, is planned for May 28, 2024. Pursuant to Section 10.04 of the City Code of Bristol, Virginia, City Council held a public hearing on the budget appropriation ordinance on April 23, 2024. The notice of public hearing for the fiscal year 24-25 budget appropriation ordinance was published in the Bristol Herald-Courier on Saturday, April 13, 2024. I would counsel, as we move forward through this process, based on the no vote for the ordinance to increase the mills tax, I would ask if council's discretion, if you approve the budget tonight, that the motion be made to direct city staff that at the first July meeting that we amend the budget to accommodate for that lack of revenue.
All right. We're looking for a council motion and second for the first reading of the ordinance, full or by caption only.
I move the first reading of the ordinance by caption only with the provision that we direct staff to find a way to deal with the not raising the mills tax at the July 1 meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by the Vice Mayor Holmes and second by Councilman Farnum. Council discussion.
There's one, actually, there's a couple of remaining items that I would like to see addressed in the budget. One in particular, that being the allocation for funding for a full-time city attorney. That's something that the state says that we have to have a city attorney. It doesn't specify explicitly that it has to be someone that's not in another role, but every other locality in the state except for one does that, and there are at least appearances of conflict on some decisions. I think that Ms. Reeds has done a good job, but it is 2 full-time positions, and I think we need 2 full-time people filling them. I do have another couple of minor things as well. One, both being some very small fees that I think should be eliminated. One of which likely costs more in staff time than it generates. And the other one is based on some advice that I've received. It's actually in conflict with state code that we're only supposed to charge what is actually required in staff costs for it, rather than being a revenue generator. The small fee that costs more than it generates is pet license fees, $2 and for a pet, and it only generates $400 a year according to the budget. That should be fairly easy to eliminate. The other one is the concealed carry permit fees, the local portion of that. I would be willing to discuss whether it should be lowered to actual costs. I've asked a couple of times concerning exactly what the actual costs are. By any chance, have you found the actual costs on that?
Council, I'm going to pull this code here real quick. It's 18.2-308.03, and this code section specifically states that the clerk shall charge a fee of $10 for processing an application or issuing a permit. Furthermore, the state police may charge a fee not to exceed $5 to cover its costs associated with processing the application. And finally, the local law enforcement agency conducting the background investigation may charge a fee not to exceed $35 to cover the cost of conducting an investigation pursuant to this article. So the $10 fee is mandatory. The state police has chosen to tell the clerk to charge a $5 fee. And then at some point in the past, the city has chosen that a $35 fee for the local background investigation was appropriate based on whatever metrics they measured, that $35 was appropriate. I can tell you that when they do a background investigation, it does take some time, it does take some resources. To tell you exactly what it would cost, I don't think we could, but it does take time and resources of our local police department when they do conduct that background investigation. So when you add the $10 to $35 and the $5 fee, you have a total of a $50 fee. I think, I know I've paid a $50 fee in the past. I think several others that I know of here in the city have paid a $50 fee. And I think the $50 fee is pretty standard across most of the state.
There's a large number of localities that have, over time, reduced their rates. Washington County next to us has eliminated the local portion, the $35 portion, only charging the state mandated $15. I think that we should look into what the actual cost is, because that's what state code says, the actual cost for the local background check.
It doesn't say actual cost. It says the local law enforcement agency conducting the background investigation may charge a fee not to exceed $35 to cover the cost of conducting an investigation. It doesn't say that they should charge the actual cost.
To cover the cost of the actual investigation.
But it says it may charge it up to $35 to cover that cost.
To cover the cost of the investigation.
Right, and
that's my point.
We're looking at millions of dollars here that this city's expending on the landfill, and I'm just going to be blunt here, but we're talking about probably less than $1,000 that impacts the city. And if we're talking about $1,000 that's going to impact this city, we might as well pack up and go home.
If it's only $1,000, can you just take it out of my salary and be done with it?
I'll be more happy to.
On this budget ordinance overall, I've said many times that I think the finance department and their team has done a very good job producing a budget. I am concerned about a $1.5 million shortfall that prevents us from being structurally balanced. I hope that we can find a way before July 1st to a path forward even before our second reading, so we know how we're going to cover that. I'm going to vote against the budget tonight. I've never done that in 6 budget cycles, and I'm going to vote against the budget tonight because it is not structurally balanced, and that's a problem for me. And I hope that we can find a way forward so I'm able to vote for final passage, but that is a major problem for me at this point.
Well, I just wanted to say overall with the budget, I'm still encouraged because we still have work to do. I feel like over the last few years, we've always kind of thought, well, with the total cost of the landfill plus other stuff like debt service we already had, I think we've known for a few years we're going to have a few years of tough budgets. And you know, I mean, I'm very happy that we're like lowering the trash rate for residents. I think that's something we've heard a lot about. We still have work to do. My hope is, I don't know if this will be the toughest budget. Don't know what it'll look like next year or the year after, but my hope is this is the tough one, and we're digging out of a hole, and things are looking up, and things are opening up and growing in the city. And again, work to do, but yeah, this is kind of what we're looking at. And maybe we wish the situation was different, but we've got more work to do, and I think we're on the track.
Obviously, this budget is not everything we'd like to do. It's not everything we want to do. I think it's a good compromise for what situation we're actually in right now. As we talked about before, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. However, this is, I think, a good path forward. We do have to find a way to bridge that gap that Mr. Osborne has pointed out, that we've talked about. I will say, with us not doing the mills tax, there are ways that we can put a hold on a few things, put a pause on a few things that we can cover part of that. So it's not quite the 1.5 million that it sounds. However, it's a tough spot, but we, as Mr. Farnham likes to point out, we have a lot of good things happening here. We have a lot of good things going on here. And I know with the casino coming online this year, there's boundless potential there. There's so many things on the cusp in this city that will bring such a benefit. We don't know what they are. We can't plan for them. We have to be conservative in our planning. But there's a lot coming. I think that we can have a positive outlook even if we have to be a little tighter around the belt right now.
Yeah, I agree. We knew it was going to be a tough budget year. Last year was tough, and the years to come are going to be tough. We still don't know exactly what the landfill is going to cost us in the end. We know we're going to be paying for it for years. So I'm very thankful we did get some funding to pay for the landfill towards that. It won't pay for it, but it's a big chunk towards that, and we're grateful for that. But as far as for our budget, I feel like if we decided to move forward with raising that meals tax, I don't want to hurt our businesses that we've heard from. And if they go out, then, it's going to hurt our budget even more. And so we've got to look at ways to support them, and but then continue moving forward. And I think it's as good as it can be. I thank you all, our staff, because I know you have been super creative in working on this budget, and you've spent many, many hours working on it, and we greatly appreciate that. I appreciate that you brought us options. When we started talking about it, we started getting the phone calls from our businesses. We started looking at options. What else can we do? So it wasn't just, this is it, and it's the way it is. So thank you for those options. And we've had to make some tough decisions. We're still going to have to make some tough ones up here. But I feel like right now, I know we've got that $1.5 million in order to get it balanced. But I feel pretty good that moving forward, that money's going to come, whether it's, through the casino opening, some of that, but also through some of these grant applications that we've applied for. I'm just being really hopeful and hoping for the best on that. Any other discussion?
There's
Yes.
one or two more things I did want to bring up. Sorry.
Yeah,
I know
go
it's
ahead.
late.
Yep.
I do want to toss out, just to have it publicly said, as we're moving forward, one of my requests this year was to have an additional firefighter to balance out the shifts. Right now we have one shift without one, or it's one less than the others. So I'm hopeful that with the gaming tax that comes back to the city, we have to split it with so many localities, but it can be going to education, transportation, public safety. I'm hopeful that what's projected is a conservative number, and we can get above that and hopefully hire that additional firefighter so our shifts are balanced. And then also, to the point about the city attorney, I wanted to say that, Mr. Eads, I appreciate what you do for the city in all the many hats you wear. You do a great job. I do believe that I see it day to day, you have the best interest of the city at heart. I think this year of all years, as much as I would like to separate those roles and just have somebody covering part of that workload for you, I think this year of all years is just not the time to do it. It just does not make sense. That would be at least 1 cent on the real estate tax to cover that position. Our real estate tax is high. You guys pay it. So I would like one day to see that happen, but it's also, there's a lot of things one day I would like to see happen that we just can't afford. So.
And just for the record, council, I'll go back to 2018. I put a city attorney in the budget in 2018. It was pulled out. I've mentioned it to councils in the past to add a city attorney. I've even said this year, add a city attorney if you see fit. Like you say, there's a lot of things that I'd like to do in this city. I would like to see our police have the best equipment in the nation. I would like to see our firefighters with the best equipment in the nation. I'd like to see our public works department have the best equipment in the nation. But unfortunately, this city is cash strapped. We are continually burning through millions of dollars on a yearly basis that will eventually, I believe, bring us below our general fund policy limit unless we find another revenue source that can offset some of the expenses associated with the landfill. And there are many things that I'd like to have in this budget that we don't have. I'd like to see 10 or 12 more police officers. I'd like to see, more firefighters. I'd like to have more people in public works. I'd like to have another level of management in place so that we can start backfilling positions when people decide to retire. Because there's a lot of knowledge that people have in this city after they leave for 30 years. And if we don't have people in place to learn and know what to do in the future, it only hurts the city in the future. So there's a lot of things that I'd like to have done. The city attorney would be great. I appreciate your kind comments, but I'm here to do what I can for the city as long as I need to be.
Thank you for those comments, and I know we have talked about it several times. You wouldn't mind at all if we had that money in the budget to have that separate position, because you are wearing two hats, and you're doing a great job at it. We appreciate what you do. And I know in a perfect world, I think all of us would agree that we would put that position back in. And as you know, when you take something out, it's really hard to find the funding and find, especially on that amount, to put it back in. And so, moving forward, I think we can still keep it on our radar. I'm not opposed to it. I know you're not, but right now we just don't have the money to do it. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
No.
Pollard.
No.
Nave.
Yes. All right. Next item, matters to be presented by members of the public, non-agenda items. We have Gloria English signed up. Hello. Hello.
My name is Gloria English. I live at 523 Leicester Street. I would greatly appreciate it very much if you all would cut that grass around my home. It looks like, well, if Jurassic Park was still around, you might find them over there.
This is the house beside you?
It's not a house, it's the land.
The land,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
And is that,
All right,
that is all
got
the,
it.
the property
It
that
belongs
is
to the college.
the college? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
And it's not just around my home.
Mm-hmm.
If you go through the neighborhood, you will see it every place else
Mm-hmm.
okay.
because it's not being cut.
Yeah.
So I would greatly appreciate it if you all would cut it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and I think, do we need to read the ordinance by caption only? Apologize for that. Thank you for catching it. I got ahead of myself.
Ordinance 20, let's see, we voted, right, yeah. Ordinance
Yes.
24-7, budget ordinance for fiscal year 2024-2025, making general fund, community development block grant fund, local funded capital projects fund, state and federal funded capital projects fund, Commonwealth Attorney Federal Revenue Sharing Fund, Transit Enterprise Fund, Flexible Spending Fund, Asset Forfeiture Fund, School Operating Fund, School Textbook Fund, School Food Service Fund, School Local Capital Projects Fund, School Construction Fund, and School Activity Fund appropriations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025 in the following amounts. General Fund, $87,549,125. Community Development Block Grant Fund, $385,000. Local Funded Capital Projects Fund, $1,209,580. State and Federal Funded Capital Projects Fund, $9,261,086. Commonwealth Attorney Federal Revenue Sharing Fund, $101,000. Transit Enterprise Fund, $970,613. Flexible Spending Fund, $62,050. Asset Forfeiture Fund, $154,500. School Operating Fund, $49,750,614. School Textbook Fund, $1,058,387. School Food Service Fund, $2,750,446. School Local Capital Projects Fund, $790,926. School Construction Fund, $1,628,238. School Activity Funds, $1,190,000. And regulating payments out of the city treasury and also fixing the tax rate on real and personal property for fiscal year 25.
And that's just the caption.
Yeah, yeah, I know, that's right. All right, next, consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Osborne and a second by Councilman Farnum. Clerk, please call the roll.
Farnum.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
Osborne.
Yes.
Pollard.
Yes.
Nave.
Yes. That is the last item on our agenda, and we stand adjourned.